Alright, hello and welcome back to Charlotte Street Computers Training. My name's Tom, and today our subject is Safari for macOS Big Sur. So there's been some big changes. I'm going to go ahead and open up Safari, which is the little compass icon. So Big Sur is the latest operating system for the Mac, and they've made some changes for Safari. And I'm actually on Apple's website right now and scrolling through the things for Big Sur, and Safari got a pretty big place in the feature set of Big Sur. So we'll be covering some of that, plus some of the basics. So we'll be starting with the basic things that were true last year and the year before, but we're also going to talk about some of these new features. First of all, I'm going to stretch out my Safari screen a little bit. Of course, I could click the green ball, which would completely take over the screen. And so if you don't mind that, you can click the green ball. I'm going to bump my mouse to the top and bring that back out of the full screen, but I am going to stretch the window to more or less fill the screen. So if you grab an edge or a corner, you can stretch out any window on your Mac. So I'm going to leave mine about there. So let's start at the top here, and this is the standard toolbar set, which we'll look at customizing this. But the first little button beyond the red, yellow, and green balls that close windows, minimize windows, and go into full screen. The first button is the button that brings the sidebar out on the Mac. So if you click this button a couple of times, it will basically toggle the sidebar in and out. And inside the sidebar are two different things. There's a thing called the reading list and the bookmarks. So your bookmarks, you may not have as many bookmarks as I do, but you will certainly have the favorite section and I believe the bookmarks menu section. So and these can expand out by clicking the little triangle or arrowhead that's next to them. We're going to be talking about bookmarks in detail, and we're going to talk about the reading list as well. For now, I'm going to close that. These are the forward and backward buttons, and the only thing I can do right now is go backward. But if I go backwards, then my forward button appears. So those are the basic backwards and forward buttons. Also, on the Mac version of Safari, you can go backwards and forwards with a gesture on the trackpad or a gesture on the mouse. So a two-finger slide on the trackpad will go backwards and forwards, almost just like flipping a page. And on the mouse, it's just a one-finger slide. So anyway, this next little guy right here, this is brand new in Big Sur. This is our privacy report, and Apple is making a big deal about privacy, and since I'm on an Apple page, they're reporting to me that this web page did not contact any trackers, which is not surprising. But we will look at this with some of the websites that are a little more notorious for doing some tracking. So the next field here, this is the unified search field. And so I'm currently on a website, and I believe I've got mine set to show exactly where I am on the website. But you can also type in a search here. So in other words, I don't have to go to google.com or yahoo.com to do a search. I can just enter it directly into this bar. So I could type in, I don't know, let's see, Apple Safari Big Sur. And you'll notice before I even press enter, it's telling me that when I do this, I'm going to be searching Google. So when I press return, it's actually bringing up a Google page and giving me the results as if I went to google.com and typed in the search. So the unified search field up here at the top, you can actually type in an exact address, apple.com/Safari and go if you know the exact address. Not too many addresses you're going to know the exact address, but if it's just something simple like google.com or apple.com or maybe your bank or something like that, you might be able to type in the exact address. But you can also do a Google search. And one of the things that we're going to be exploring in some detail is the preferences of Safari, which you can get to by clicking on the Safari menu in the upper left next to the Apple, and the third item down, Safari preferences. One of those preferences gives you the ability to change the search engine that is used when you type in a search at the top. And by default, it's set to Google. If you're not a big fan of Google, you can click this and you can choose one of the other big search engines. DuckDuckGo has made a pretty good name for itself for being a very privacy-oriented search engine in distinction from Google. I haven't heard of this new one, Ecosia. We'll have to check into that one. But so if I didn't want to do my searching with Google, I could change it to one of these others. And the next time I come up here, Safari is using an encrypted connection to apple.com. Okay, fine. All right, I must have clicked the security button. All right, so I'm going to type in Apple Safari and press return. And actually, before I press return, it's telling me I'm going to be searching with DuckDuckGo instead of Google. So here's the DuckDuckGo logo, and here's the results from DuckDuckGo. So you've got control over what search engine you use here, and you can type in a web address. Other things that are happening up here, let me just go ahead and click Apple Safari, is the ability to add a web page to the reading list. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. And over on the right, you can refresh the page, or you can request a translation. So if you've stumbled onto a website that is not in English, you can actually ask it to translate. And so this particular one is in English, so I could translate it to another language. I'm going to go to a website that I went to a little bit earlier. Hopefully I've still got it. This is a Chinese website that of a company that makes audio equipment. And they actually have an English version of their webpage, but if they didn't, I could actually click this and translate to English or whatever other language. Most of us here are going to be English. So it actually does a pretty good job of translating this web page into English. So anyway, if you run into that, give that a try. This is new. I think they're still calling this a beta. But so anyway, if you need a page to refresh, maybe you're watching some sports scores or just some page that's changing frequently, you can click this button to make it load again. Over on the right-hand side, we have a very important button that I believe, it's called the Share button. And when we click that, we get, again, the option to add to the reading list. This would be the same exact option as that little plus that we had over here. But then there's also the ability to add a permanent bookmark, to email this page to someone, to airdrop it to a nearby Apple device. We could make a note about this web page. We could text someone a link to this web page. We could also make a reminder about this web page. So very important little button here. Anyway, the next button in line is a little plus that adds additional tabs to your window. So most of you are familiar with tabs. Even if you're not, you've probably experienced tabs, because sometimes when you click a link, it actually opens the results in a new web page in a separate tab. Perhaps we'll see some examples of that as we're browsing today. But if I wanted to open a new web page here without losing where I am on Apple's web page, I could click the plus And now I have two tabs. I have my original Safari page from Apple, and I've got what Apple calls a start page. Now, when you click the plus, you have an option of what happens when you do that. And so that is actually also in the preferences of Safari. And in the very first option here under General, what happens when you click New Tabs? And I've got mine set to open to the Safari start page. I do have the option of opening what is called the home page, which I currently got set to one of the Charlotte Street Computers web pages. I could have it open to a completely blank page and then go from there. Or I could actually make it open the same page that I'm currently in. So gone is the option to open your favorites. That is actually a part, however, of the start page. So I'm going to change mine back to start page. You can also determine from this little spot what happens when you open a new window. So new window, my current new windows are opening to my home page, which is the charlottestreetcomputers.com/classes page. So if I click new window, file new window, that's what I'm expecting to have open. So there we go. So it's actually opening a specific page on the charlottestreetcomputers.com web page. So that's what I've got my new windows opening with, but new tabs are opening with the start page, and you get to decide what your new windows and tabs are going to open with. And then I've also got mine set that when I open Safari for the first time, or if I've closed Safari, I've got it set to open with all the windows and tabs from the last session. So that means that if I accidentally quit Safari, I'm not going to have to reopen a bunch of tabs to get going on that. So when I open Safari back up, I still have the start page here and the Safari web page from Apple. So that's the plus. And then this final button is actually a tab view that shows you all of the tabs that you have open in a very graphic way. So you can also open a new tab here. So if I click the plus, it actually opens a new tab. And so let's open a few more tabs. I'm actually going to click on some favorites here and open something to the Weather Channel. So now I've got my Safari page, my start page. Maybe I'll click on Charlotte Street Computers, and you'll notice actually one of the new features of Safari in Big Sur is the ability to hover over a tab and actually get a preview of the web page. So as you're browsing, if you've got a lot of tabs open, let me keep going here. I'm going to click the plus, and maybe we'll open some news. Maybe I'll click the plus and open a sports web page. I'll do ESPN. And so now I've got 5 tabs open. And as I hover over these other tabs, it's giving me a little bit more of a preview of what's going on those pages. It's also showing me now by default, this is something that you used to have to check a little box for. Let me just click to a less busy web page. By default, it's showing me the little fave icons. Fave, I think, is short for favorite, but it's showing me the little icons of the web page that I've got open on the tabs, which is also helping me to know what web pages I already have open. But again, I'm going to click this last button here, and so now I've got a much more developed tab overview page. And by the way, you can get to this page if you've got the Apple TrackPad, and I do. I'm switching to a view of that right here. You can actually just pinch your trackpad and it will take you right into the tab overview mode. So that might actually be something that you do accidentally. To get out of it, you just pinch outwards on the preview of the tab that you want. So you can actually just hover, zoom in, zoom out. You can also zoom in on a web page, but if you, as you're zooming back out, if you go too far, it will take you back into that tab overview page. This is not something that the Apple mouse does. So that's just this is just one of the things that happens with the trackpad. Now, one thing that does happen with the Apple mouse that I've seen people complain about is they've come to me with this dilemma of my browser just automatically zooms in on something and then I can't really zoom out. It's like hard to zoom out. So what that is a little double tap of the mouse button, and that's something that you can disable in the system preferences. If you come over to the mouse section, it's actually a feature, and it's a double tap with one finger. So if you lightly tap, even with a little nervous twitch, if you lightly tap your mouse and this is checked, when you're in Safari and other apps, it's going to zoom in on the page, and just a second double tap will zoom out. So you may not have to disable this feature if now that you know what it does, you just double tap again to get back out. But so anyway, that's the basic set of tools at the top. This section is completely customizable. You can come up to the View menu and you can customize this toolbar. And so you can add additional things like maybe your eyes are getting older like mine and you want to be able to have the pages show bigger text. You could drag a little set of tools up here that will let you zoom in and zoom out on the text of a web page. There's an option for putting a home button up here that will automatically take you to your home page. I'm going to drag a little button up here called Website Preferences, because we're going to talk about that in a little while. It's a little gear that you can drag there. You can also get to this in other ways, but I'm going to just make a little button. You can put a little bookmark page up there. You can also take things out that you don't like. So if you didn't like the privacy report up there, you could actually remove it. I'm going to put mine back up, and I'm going to put it right there. And I'm going to go ahead and click Done. So if I wanted to quickly go back to the regular set, I could take this whole bar and drag it up to the top, and it would take it back to the original things. So I'm going to click Done. So now when I click the Home button, it's going to take me back to that Charlotte Street Computer page. I'm going to do the two-finger slide to get back to the page I was on. If I was reading this page and the text wasn't big enough for me, it is now, but let's just say I go to the bottom where Apple typically has some very small print. I could click the plus here and make that text bigger. So it's actually also changing where I am on the page, but this just made the text much bigger, so with the plus and the minus. So you can also, with the web preferences, you can actually make certain web pages come up to a specific zoom level. So we'll talk about that. In fact, this might be a good place to do that. Let me just come over to the Wall Street Journal, and typically they've got multiple columns of articles and previews of things, and it's often too small for me. So I believe I've actually set this. Yes, I have. So if I click these web settings, or I believe if you two-finger click on the title of your web page, you can go to the settings for the site. So that's the same thing as this little gear. I've set the Wall Street Journal to automatically zoom in to 125%. Because the 100% is pretty small. So anyway, if there's a web page that you like to go to that is too small or too big, you can actually set it to go to a specific size. I'm going to set mine back to the 125. I think that's 150. Actually, 150 kind of works too. So I could do that. I think all Safari web pages are set to stop media with sound that would automatically start playing. That way it doesn't just blast away. It's especially annoying if you're browsing at night in bed. On a laptop, it won't just blast you out there by some ad that starts up playing. There's also an option to use what they call the reader view when available. And this can basically clean up a web page from all of its ads and just make it basically text to read. Apparently that's available on the Wall Street Journal on their main page. It's especially useful when you're in particular articles. And so I've just clicked an article, and it's almost hard to read. Let's see, do they have an option? Oh, they've actually got an option for making the text bigger right on their web page. But there's ads on the right. Sometimes there's also ads on the left, and it's almost just hard to read. But you can actually click, let's click this. I don't know, there used to be an option here. Let's see this. There it is. Without going into the web page settings, there's actually a new option over here to show the reader view. And this is basically going to give me that article, or at least whatever they're going to allow me to have for free, without any of the distractions. And once you're in there, you can actually adjust the size, you can adjust the background color. If you're reading at night, you can change that to black. So you can also change the font. So this is a nice option when you're reading articles on web pages. So check that out. Look for this little icon, the reader view, or if you really love it, you can set it up to where it always goes to that view if you're on a web page that supports that. So I'm going to go ahead and uncheck that. Also, on the settings for web pages, there is an option to let it or make it ask to be able to use your camera or your microphone or screen sharing or location. So all of these things are set by default to ask you for that. So if you went to a Skype web page, for instance, it's going to ask you before it automatically uses your camera or your microphone. You're going to have to give it permission to do that. Okay, I think now's a good time to look at bookmarks a little bit. There's actually a whole menu devoted to bookmarks in Safari. And as we've mentioned, when you click the new tab page, it opens your favorites at the very top. So actually, before we go into favorites, let's look at the start page. This is a customizable page. And so I've turned on all the features that the start page offers. And you can get to those options by clicking with 2 fingers on the trackpad or a right click on the mouse if you have that enabled. And there's all these different things that you can add. So if I don't want it to be as cluttered, I can turn off the different options here, and it will simplify it. So I could just have a page that opens up with my favorites the way it used to. But this is not bad. This show frequently visited would actually show me web pages that I go to whether or not I have them as favorites. So I go to the Weather Channel a lot. I go to Apple pages a lot. I go to ESPN a lot, or Charlotte Street Computers. So these are my top visited sites. I can also show more places that I've been recently. Not to mention, not to mention the history menu. There's actually a history menu that shows you exactly where you've been. But anyway, again, with a two-finger click or a right click, you can turn on these different features. I'll show less of those. Here's the privacy report, which is this little button up here. Actually, it's a little different than this button, but it's related to this button. This is telling me that in the last 7 days, as I've been browsing with this particular computer, Safari has prevented 99 trackers from profiling me to try to gather information about me. So in some cases that might be undesirable, and I believe that's something that we can turn off. And here's many details about that after I've clicked it. So it tells me what websites have been tracking me, and just today weather.com had 59 different trackers. Wall Street Journal had 48, ESPN had 44, and so anyway, Charlotte Street Computers had one. I'll have to check and see what that is. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Let's go to the Weather channel and click this privacy button up here. 31 trackers were prevented from profiling me. I can click this little arrow and see the details, and that's actually bringing up that same little option that the start page was showing. Okay, back to bookmarks. So again, there is a whole section, a whole menu devoted to bookmarks where you can add a bookmark, same option as going over to the share button. I could add a bookmark for all the tabs I have open. I could add a folder, which we're going to look at in a minute. I can also add to the reading list from here, or I want to actually edit them. So I'm coming back to bookmarks. I'm going to click edit, and this opens a page completely devoted to bookmarks. And I can click the little arrows, expand menus. If there's something that I no longer need, or I don't even remember putting this here, I can press the delete key on my keyboard, and it's removing those bookmarks. So anyway, I don't think I need those anymore. I've made some folders. If there's some folders that you don't need to remove some of the bookmarks or move them, or just move them around, you can do that over here. I'm just clicking and holding on one of the items and dragging it, and that moves it up or down the list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder for the places that I go to pay bills. But you could use your imagination here. Maybe you've got a new hobby. Create a new folder for your new hobby, and then you can start collecting bookmarks in that folder. And that cleans up the list. It makes it easier to find the bookmark later once you've gone somewhere else. So I'm going to do that from this Edit Bookmarks section, and then this button that says New Folder. And the new item has appeared at the bottom down here, and I'm going to call this Pay Bills. Now, I want this to appear in my favorites section. If I come to my start page, the bill paying folder is not in there because it's not set to go to my favorites in this list. It's just in the general list, which is going to show up in the bookmarks menu, but not in the favorites section. So I'm going to take this folder and actually drag it into favorites. And so now when I click the start page, there is the folder. Now it's an empty folder, it has nothing in it. By the way, when you go to folders in this way, there's a back button to get you back out of that group into the main list again. So this is an example of a folder. I've got an Apple folder, I've got a news folder. Getting out of the folder, you just click the top little arrow there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go somewhere where I pay a bill. let's just say I'm going to pay my iPhone wireless bill. So I'm going to go to Verizon and find their sign-in page. And I think I'll just bookmark this page right here. So I could use the share button and do add bookmark there. Or I could come to the bookmarks menu and do add bookmark here. So let's just do that. And it's offering to put this in my favorites, not in that folder that I made, but just in the general group of favorites. And the title of it is going to be this huge, long title. All I want to do is call this Verizon Login. So I'm going to just retitle that and press, I'm not going to press add yet. I want to make sure this goes to the folder that I just made. So I'm going to click favorites, and this allows you to choose precise places to put a bookmark. So I'm going to choose pay bills, and then I'm going to click add. So anyway, let's go to another one. I need to pay my internet bill. So I'm going to go to that'll be spectrum.net, and we'll go to their, actually I think they've got a sign in button right there, or it's up here. And this is where I'm going to want to go. And so I want to do that thing where I add a bookmark, and I'm going to just type in pay charter and out. Now in this case I can just click add because it is showing me the last folder that I used. So if you're on a roll, you can just click the add button because the folder you need will already be in that list up there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and click add. And so now when I come to the favorites page, I've got the folder with the pay bills, and I now have 2 items inside that folder. And so I'm not going to have to do any searching the next time I want to pay the bill. I can just come into my pay bills folder and go right to it. Also, let me just show you one more thing. When I'm just going to go to another page here. If you click in the menu bar up at the top, this unified search field that we talked about, your favorites show up when you click that. So there's my bookmarks that I just made, and so it makes it easy. Your favorites are just present all the time, just by clicking in the search bar. All right. So remember, bookmarks, edit bookmarks, and this is where you clean up things, delete bookmarks, and so forth. And by the way, if you're using iCloud, and I'm going to open my iCloud settings. I'm going to go to the Apple and click System Preferences and click the little grid here, and I'm going to go to my Apple ID settings. One of the options, and one of the reasons I like Safari, is there's an option to synchronize your bookmarks with all of your Apple devices. So what this means is those bookmarks that I've just made today are going to automatically synchronize to my iPad and to my phone. So I'm not going to have to go in and recreate those bookmarks for those other devices. They're just going to sync. Also, Safari can keep track of passwords. Now this is Johnny Appleseed's computer. He has chosen not to synchronize passwords. We sometimes use these on demo devices, and we don't want people accidentally having their password recorded. But personally, on my computer, my iPhone, my iPad, I have this box checked, and Safari will keep track of my passwords. And I'm going to show you where that happens in a little bit. So let's come back up to the menu at the top, and so I'm going to click Safari Preferences. And so we've spent a little time in general, we've spent a little time in the search area. There's also a tabs section that'll let you determine a little bit more about how to manage your tabs. Here's the passwords section. So if you're synchronizing passwords, And even if you're not, Safari can actually remember passwords for websites that you go to. So we're gonna make that our next topic. So let's just say that I go to my Gmail. So gmail.com, let's see if it's remembering anything. I'm going to come up and sign in. And this looks like it's remembering Johnny Appleseed's Gmail address. Let's click next and see if it has that. So it does have the password memorized for Johnny Appleseed's Gmail. So when he goes in there, let's just, let's see what this says. My security, oh gosh, I hate that question. When did I create this email address? I have no idea. Try another way. Confirm your recovery email. That'll work. So let's just type that in. You can reach me here as well. Haven't done this class in about a year because of COVID. So anyway, it finally let me in there. But the point of this was that Safari was remembering the password to the Gmail account. So let's go take a look at that. I'm going to click Safari Preferences. It's not going to let me look at them without entering the password for this computer. So that's a safeguard for other people getting in and finding out your passwords to all the web pages you go to, if you keep your computer kind of locked. So I'm going to type in this computer's password, and there is there's the Google, the record of me remembering the Google password. So I've also memorized a website called Eventbrite and the one called Google. Let's move this over to the side because I don't want to show you Johnny Appleseed's password, but I'm not going to be able to do this. But anyway, if I click this, it would be showing me the password over on the right there, and I can also remove this so that it won't remember the password anymore. So if you go somewhere and you do log in, it will be asking you if you want Safari to remember the password. Also, there's a section that will, when you go to web pages, that will automatically fill in your information, so you don't have to completely fill out forms. And here's the information that Safari is going to use. It's basically going to use your entry in the Contacts app. So if you don't have yourself in your Contacts app, you can create a contact for yourself, and then it will use that information to fill in when you go to websites. Here's the search field that we were tinkering with. And actually, if you don't like your favorites showing up, you could uncheck that. And let's go to the security section. Safari is going to be trying to warn you if you go to a website that's pretending to be another website. So it's going to be doing its best to do that. Now, if you happen to be the first person or the first batch of people that goes to a new fraudulent website, that may not work. But as soon as Apple starts getting reports that this is fraudulent, then they will be warning you when you go to a website like that. And then there's an option to disable JavaScript. I suppose that could be a security risk, but there are some websites that need that to be enabled for them to work properly. Let's go to the privacy section here. So when you go to a website, as I have done today, I've gone to weather.com, I've gone to ESPN, I've gone to a few others that Apple's been blocking them from tracking me. So those sites don't know very much about me based on what I've done on their website. If for some reason you want that not to be in effect, you can uncheck that box. You can also block cookies from here, but again, and it's actually telling me this, websites may not work properly if you do this. Are you sure you want to block cookies? I'm going to cancel that because I'm going to allow them. Now, if you want to remove cookies that have been collected on your browser, this is where you do it. So these are all the cookies that it's loading them right now. We will give it a second, and that usually happens quicker than that. So I'm a little surprised it's taking that long. There we go. Look at all of these things that have deposited a little cookie on my, let me grab this little slider. There are a ton of them. If that bothers you, you can remove them right here. Now, they will quickly reaccumulate. Like I've completely wiped out the cookies. Let's see what, wow. No saved web, there we go. No saved web data. But if I go back, let's just say done for a sec, close this. If I go back and reload a web page and then go back into preferences and go back to manage website data, all of these have been added just by going to Wall Street Journal. And other web pages are going to be worse than that. So anyway, let's go ahead and click done. Websites, this is where you can determine a lot of things about what a website can do or not do. So, for instance, the websites that can use that reader feature that I was showing on the Wall Street Journal. You can tell it, when I go to weather.com, I want that feature to work automatically, but not when I go to macworld.com, just as an example. So actually, I would probably want WLS to use that feature. Content blockers. Do you want to use content blockers for certain websites? And some websites don't work properly if you do content blockers. In other words, there's things that might pop up when you want to make a purchase. So in some cases, you're going to need to turn off that feature. In other cases, you can do it just fine, and everything will work fine or better than if you don't have that turned on. If you want certain web pages to automatically play the content, you could allow that to happen here. I'm going to actually stop the media from doing this. But if there's a web page that you go to that you want that to happen, you can actually allow it to happen all the time by going here. You can also change what the default for any website, a new website, would be from here. You can see which websites want to use your camera. Maybe you do Google Meet a lot and you need to allow Google to use your camera. Now, I would never do that, so I'm going to click Ask. Same thing with microphone, same thing with screen sharing, same thing with location services. Now, for instance, I have allowed weather.com to know my location because I want them to give me the weather for where I am. Anyway, you get the choice. Now, one thing we haven't talked about yet is downloads. Do I want to allow downloads on websites? You know, I've allowed all these different websites to give me downloads automatically when I click a download. I've also got other websites set to ask. So I think now's a good time to talk about downloads. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to talk about a product that we like, that we actually use as one of our tools for removing malware. So let's go ahead. I'm going to close some tabs here. And in fact, I could do this from this tab overview. I'm going to go ahead and click the X's. All right, so I'm going to do a new tab, and I'm going to search for a website called Malwarebytes. And I think actually malwarebytes.com, M-A-L, there we go, malwarebytes.com is what I want. This company does a good job at keeping their program up to date. And they have a paid version and a free version. In some ways, we actually almost prefer the free version because it doesn't use as much resources in the background and doesn't use up as much battery power and so forth on the laptops. So I'm going to click the free download, and it's telling me what things I don't get when I do the free one. In other words, it's not running all the time. It removes malware and spyware, but only when I tell it to, not in real time. Now, I don't know if you saw that. When I clicked get the free version, something happened. It actually jumped into my downloads folder. And I've got a shortcut to my downloads folder right down here at the bottom. So there's my new Malwarebytes download. But if you don't have that, you will have this little new icon that was not here when we went through our icons earlier, and that's because I had cleared the results from this. So if I click that, it's going to show me that I've recently downloaded Malwarebytes for Mac, and it's going to give me a little magnifying glass. That's what that is. It kind of looks like a little cube, but it's a magnifying glass. If I click that button, it's going to open the downloads folder and take me to the place where that was downloaded. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this. So just the fact that I clicked the download button doesn't mean I've installed Malwarebytes on my computer. I've downloaded the installer package. So I now need to double click on that package. And some other websites, sometimes it looks a little bit different. And let's hide other things for a moment. So I need to follow their instructions. I'm going to click continue, agree to their terms, and install. So type in my Mac's password. This is not my Apple ID password. It's the password to get into this Mac. And I'm going to click install or press return. So this is a pretty small little program. It doesn't take a long time to download. It doesn't take a long time to install. After it's installed, you will have this M appearing in your menu bar at the top, in the status area of your menu bar. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to select this is a personal computer, and I'm not going to activate anything. Just going to get started. And so this is the button that you're going to want to click to see if you've got any malware. I'm going to close this for a sec and close the installer experience. And my Mac is actually asking me if I want to move that installer package to the trash. I've installed it, so I'm done with that part. I have the program installed on my computer. I'm going to go ahead and move the installer to the trash because I'm not going to need this version of it again. If I ever want to install it again, I can go to malwarebytes.com and get it again, and it will probably be a newer version anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and move to trash. So now this little M appears in the upper right hand corner of my Mac, and I can open the program and scan for malware anytime. So the only thing I would say about downloads is to just be very careful about where you're downloading something from. If you're installing a program, you want to make sure it's from a reputable source and that you're getting it, even if it's a program that you've used before, you want to make sure that you're getting it from the place where it needs to come from. So and not some hacker that's got some extra goodies that's going to get installed along with that. So anyway, this program runs fairly quickly, usually runs in a minute or less, and you want to see 0 detections. If it shows you more than 0, then let it remove them, quarantine them, and you can actually then empty the quarantine. So mine found 0 threats or potentially unwanted programs. So I'm going to click done. The quarantine area is here. You can delete things that are in there. So excellent little program. It's not related to Safari, but it is an example of downloading something in Safari. So that's how you download something from the internet. Again, be very careful when you do that. This is basically the place where you could get malware, is by downloading things and installing them without knowing what you're doing. So I did have to type in my Mac password, so Apple was trying to slow me down and keep me from doing something rashly. Okay, we've got a little bit more time here. Let's go back to the preferences. So we just talked about websites. Extensions. So extensions are the ability to add extra capabilities to Safari that Apple didn't include when you got it. So I do not have any extensions installed, but I could click the button down here that says More Extensions, and I believe it'll open the App Store. Let me just close this for a second. Whoops. And it has taken me to a section of the App Store that is populated with, specifically with, extensions for Safari. So, if you have trouble with grammar, there's an extension by Grammarly, or there are pop-up blockers, all kinds of things that are available. So browse better. There's an extension for 1Password if you're a 1Password user. Let's go ahead and see all. There's just a bunch of things that you'll find in here. Browse better, read with ease, different readers. So check that out. The extensions area is a place where sometimes malware likes to hide. So if there's something in the preferences here under extensions that you didn't put there, you might want to go in there and remove it. And anything I want to do, okay, yes, I did have this box checked under advanced to show full website address. I personally like knowing exactly where I am on a website, so I've got that checked. We haven't really talked much about the reading list. So this checkbox reminds me of that. When I first used the reading list, it asked me if I wanted to save articles for offline reading. So let's go explore that a little bit. So I said yes, so now that box is checked. If you change your mind, you can go in there and uncheck that. So let's go back to a news website. This time I'm going to go to, let's go to a website called Apple Insider. They usually have some good articles. Let's go ahead and click one of them. Yes, this is an article. All right, it's not a very long article. I could read that, but let's just say I want to save that article for reading later. Now, I don't want to bookmark the page because I don't want to clutter up my carefully crafted bookmark section with things that I go to again and again. It's kind of a bookmark, but it's basically a list of things that I want to read. So I'm going to click the share button and click add to the reading list. So the reading list has a pair of glasses on it. I don't know if you saw that jump, but that something just jumped over into the sidebar and it's gone into my reading list. So here is a list of things that I've done that to. Articles that I didn't have a chance to read, but I wanted a record so that I can go back and read it later. And so because of that checkbox, when you first do this, it will probably ask you if you want to save things for offline reading. What that means is if I happen to go to read this article when I'm not connected to the internet, the contents is actually going to be saved onto my computer. So here's some older things that I've added to the reading list. I added the Safari page. Here's some very old things that I've done in previous classes. So anyway, reading list is right here. It will also be on your start page if you've allowed, you know what, I think I disabled that. So show reading list. And there's my reading list. So here are the things that I've added to that list, and I can quickly get to them just by scrolling down on my start page. So check that out. If you like to read articles on the web, then this might be a good feature for you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to cover. Just look at this feature for a second. New private window. If you're concerned about tracking, you can actually go into a private view that completely creates no record of you going to a website, and it lets you know that you're doing that. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So that's File, New Private Window. Well, last but not least, there is a manual for Safari that you can find in the Help menu under Safari Help. And it will open up a window that basically is the Safari manual. The only problem with it, in my view, is that it won't go out of the way. Once it's open, then it stays on top of everything else. So what I've done is I've accumulated, if I go to the Charlotte Street Computers training webpage, right below the calendar of our events is a training resource called Apple Manuals. And if you'll click that, I've compiled a list of Mac manuals that will open up in a tab. So for instance, the Mac Safari, I think they probably updated this to Big Sur now, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. This is the same manual basically, and when you go there, it's in a tab, so you can actually go somewhere else and experiment with it and then go back to where you were. So you can always click the table of contents, get started. So everything that I've been telling you about is in this manual. Customizing Safari, customizing the start page. I'm sure there's a section on bookmarks. Here's a section on the reading list. Browsing the web, bookmarking pages. So everything that we've covered in this class is available in the Safari user guide. All right, I think we're done. So thanks for joining us. Check out our other classes, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.